Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode number 50.
Congratulations, you showed up. Give yourself a high five in celebration of your success. Welcome to the Cashflow Diary, where new and experienced investors come to take confident action towards their goals. Your host is a family man, a real estate entrepreneur, investor, coach, and instructor. As a master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow 101 game, he's inspired many to begin their journey into creating cash flow for themselves and their family. And now, here he is to offer you the tools required to earn the income desired. Your cash flow coach, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am glad that you are here and still listening. It's amazing to me just how far these episodes reach. I know some of you are listening to us as far away as UK and Germany, etc. And it's just fun to know that, you know, in this day and age, we have the ability to affect so many lives and help so many people across so many states, so many countries, so many lines. And the only thing that really matters is that you've got to have something good to say, something useful to share. And I hope that you guys are continuing to find something useful here. And I think that's why you keep coming back. I know I've been encouraged every time I see the downloads go up, every time I look on Facebook and see that you guys are sharing episodes saying, hey, this was great and that was great. And I just, you know, I feel very honored that you take the time to listen. With that being said, something free for you. It's still there. LearnInvestingNow.com. LearnInvestingNow.com. Go there to get a free course on just being able to transact real estate using none of your own money or credit. We talk about things like raising private capital, wholesaling, which is the primary way to buy properties and sell properties using none of your own money or credit. You say, I don't have anything. This is one good way to get started. And LearnInvestingNow.com is just for that. It's for you who are looking to learn investing in now. That's why that particular website is there. Some of you may have seen by now, we have a new site going up. It's called Begin Investing Now. Some of you are like, you know what? I don't want to do the investing myself. I'd rather you do it for me, Jay. I'd rather you take all the time and do the research, etc. Well, that's what begininvestingnow.com is all about. So you've got two choices now. It's Learn Investing for those who want to go and learn. It's begininvestingnow.com for those who want to really just go out there and have a simple, clean, easy way to buy a house, to buy an asset that produces cash flow and allows them to sit at home and continue to collect checks and, well, listen to the podcast, of course. So with all of that being said, though, one of the things that I hope that you have been getting is how cash flow can be generated in various different ways. And I've been having a fun and exciting time interviewing many different people from all across the U.S. About how they generate cash flow. And I think today's story is going to be just as interesting, if not more interesting than some of the others in the past, simply because it's going to be a little bit different than some of the entrepreneurs. And for me, I'm excited because, you know, I don't know the answer to these questions, by the way. I don't really ask the questions ahead of time so that I know. I like talking to the individual and finding out what started their desire to create cash flow and why it's so important to them and what those benefits were and why all these things happen, because we all have a story and we all have a reason and a way to create it. My goal in sharing this with you is to make sure that you understand that cash flow comes from many different places, not just real estate. Real estate, yes, you know I'm biased, but it can come from so many different places, and we can all start with a passion and a purpose. And I know that the guest that we're going to be talking to today has both of those, a passion and a purpose. So do me a favor and listen to Miss Jessica Rhodes. Jessica, you there?
I am here. How you doing today?
So far, so good. Very, very excited.
Me too.
Yeah, well, I can only imagine. You get to be an entrepreneur. Have you ever met like an entrepreneur who's not excited?
I haven't, and if they're not excited, maybe they're not an entrepreneur, because I am excited every day. I'm so happy that I get to do what I do.
I know. Do your friends ask you like, "Hey, do you just drink coffee all the time?" Is that what they ask you?
Well, yeah. I'm a work-at-home mom. I have a 10-month-old, and you know, when my friends hear, when people hear that I get to stay at home, but I also have a career and I make money from my home office, they think I have the most fabulous lifestyle. And while I love it, it's not quite luxurious and fabulous all the time.
You mean when the kid cries really, really loud, right? When you're on the phone with a client,
Oh
that's
yeah.
not exactly the best moment in time.
I had a phone call yesterday actually. I have I have a virtual assistant business, and I was on the phone with a prospect for one of my clients, and it was right after my nanny left, and I just had to take the call. So my son Nathan is crawling around the office, and he's being really good, but he's just picking around things, and I'm kind of walking around on the phone, multitasking, and every now and then Nathan would go, ah. Because he's 10 months old, and that's what he does. He randomly just yells things out. And the guy that I was talking to, the you got a little one there? I said, yep, guilty. And he was really nice because a lot of the people I talk to are also, work at home entrepreneurs, and they're totally understanding, but it's definitely a balancing act.
I know, right? I know. Well, for those who may not know about you and how you got started and all these types of things, one of the what I would love for you to do is to share with us what I call your origin story. There's something that usually I know for me, many of you already know that my wife and I we were in a what many would call a horrible situation. She couldn't eat or drink. She almost died a few times from hyperemesis. I had a punctured lung, couldn't walk and talk, needed to find a way to generate income and in a way that, if we got sick again, that we could still survive. That was part of the genesis of us. Share with us, if you will, a little bit of your origin story, a little bit about, what it is that led you to do what it is that you are doing now.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the opportunity to come on your show, because I love sharing my story, and I hope that it resonates with listeners. I am 26 years old, and I got pregnant. Well, my son's 10 months old. So, a year and a half ago, I got pregnant. My, husband and I are both working, and I was in a full-time job. I worked at a nonprofit organization, and I was directing a staff of fundraisers. So, it was a great job. I got that job was when I was in college and just stuck around there. Modest paying nonprofit job. It paid the bills and everything for a young married couple without a lot of bills and responsibility. But when we decided to start a family, my whole mindset just really changed. I mean, everything that I was really prioritizing and things that were important to me, I mean, everything started to shift because coming from the nonprofit career where I was working at an environmental organization. So my whole purpose, I really just looked at it as, my job was my life. My whole purpose was going out and saving the world and, making clean drinking water accessible and affordable. While that's all still important to me, what shifted when I got pregnant was all I cared about and all I wanted was to, bring this child into the world and raise him and really just focus on my family. So I don't think one or the other is, better. I'm not placing judgment, but for the phenomenal thing that happened in my mind was that my whole world was now about this young and innocent child. So to have that, modest paycheck, it wasn't really going to fit anymore. And the other thing about my origin story is that I was absolutely committed to being a stay-at-home mom. I know, gosh, millions of children, go to daycare, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My parents did not have a lot of money growing up. We were always really tight for money, but they had made a commitment as parents and as a married couple to have my mom be at home with us, and that really impacted me. And so I was really committed to also making that work for my now family. And I didn't know how that was going to happen. There's no way that, I could do my last job. I couldn't do that from home. Had to be present in my office with my staff. So I told my boss that I would be leaving when my son was born. Again, not having a plan B, which maybe that was the entrepreneur in me, not having a plan B and just going for it. And my dad is a business coach, and he has an online business, and he works from a home office. And he told me about virtual assistants and that whole industry. And I really didn't know anything about virtual assistants. I had never heard the term before. I literally knocked on doors fundraising for this organization. So my job was completely offline, and now I was venturing into this online world. But, to make kind of a long story short, he coached me in starting a virtual assistant firm, and I did it, on the side when I was pregnant, finishing up my job. I worked up until 2 days before my son was born, and then I kind of went, full time with entrepreneurship. And, the big reason my big passion and purpose for starting my own business and not just getting a job where I could work from home is having that limitless potential for profitability and for growth. I mean, I was really just done having to ask permission to make changes in my office and in my job, and having to ask someone to take a vacation. I mean, I was talking with somebody about this last week, and it's so little because to ask someone for a vacation day at a job, but for me, I always dreaded it. And I love that I can just work really hard in my business and get an instant pay raise by working hard and getting a new client, whereas in my job I would have to wait a whole year to get $1,500 more a year
Right.
in my salary. And so and again, just I'm so passionate about, just creating a comfortable life for my family. I mean, I do feel like I had a really good childhood, and I really never had really hard times in my life. But, my family, I've, three other siblings and two parents, and money was always tight. I was babysitting when I was 13. I always had a job. My parents never just handed us money. We always had to work for it. And while I always, I want to raise my son to always work for everything, I also don't want him to ever feel like he's struggling. Like, I really want a comfortable lifestyle. So it's kind of my origin story.
That's awesome. Well, what I love about that is that there's so many similarities to entrepreneurs. We all gravitate towards something. Some sort of pain pushes us in a direction that we may not have been prepared for. Like how you said, you just jumped right in. I mean, I don't know any entrepreneur that stops, that's known for stopping and thinking about it. They just pretty much go.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a difference between small business owners and entrepreneurs. And my dad, the business coach, always talks about the difference. And I feel like the big difference is small business owners, may come up with a huge plan and a huge business plan. And I mean, guilty as charged. I didn't come up with a business plan. I just jumped right in. I just started doing the work, and I figure it out as I go, and things are always constantly changing. And I think that's kind of what makes an entrepreneur is they're just constantly moving, constantly taking massive action, and following the money, doing what works, finding a demand in the marketplace and figuring out a way to supply that demand.
Exactly. And we solve problems.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, one of the things that you've brought up that I don't think I've ever mentioned to the audience is just understanding that we all have things that irritate us. And for you, you didn't like the idea of asking for permission to go on vacation. And I can resonate with that because there was a time when my oldest daughter was sick and I had to ask permission to go get her from the school. And I'm just like, this just ain't right. I couldn't do that. And it irritated me to the point, and we all have things that poke at us and prod at us. And every day we continue to show up to the job or to whatever circumstance that we're in. That's just us agreeing with that it must be okay because we're not doing anything about it. What's commendable for you is that you've overcome some of the most common objections of, well, I have a full-time job. How on earth am I ever going to figure out how to be at home with my kid? You didn't let that stop you. And not only did you not let that not stop you, but you said, and if I heard you correctly, you said you were working up until 2 days before your son was born, which means that I'm assuming somewhere in there you still had the full-time job at the same time?
So I gave birth March 10th. 2013, and I started my virtual assistant work November of 2012. So I was working, doing VA work in the mornings before I would go into my office, and in the evening. So I was doing it part time for several months, and I was my son was due March 8th, and I was going to work all the way up until like I went into labor. And a couple of weeks before, I said to my boss, I was just totally done. I'm like 9 months pregnant. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So my last day will be March 8th, and then of course, like luck would have it, he came on that Sunday for on the March 10th. So I was thinking maybe I'll get a week off, but well, that's just how my life goes. So I worked right up until the end, and then I gave myself 2 weeks maternity leave.
There you
And
go.
then I started working again. But it was from home. I had my laptop. I could be working from my couch in my living room, so
And
it worked out fine. But it
yes,
was hard.
and but you're illustrating my exact point in that you many times people will use the excuse, oh, I don't have the time. But and I tell people all the time, well, you have the same 24 hours as everybody else. And it's what you do and how you prioritize those 24 hours. If it really means that much to you, you'll steal from your sleep if you've got to. If that's what it's going to take. And that's exactly what you did.
Right.
And
Ever
that's... Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, ever since that's also true, and ever since I really became an entrepreneur, I've really immersed myself in personal development. Resources, books, podcasts, videos, Tony Robbins videos, and I've really, I made a big shift in my mindset. So I not only learned kind of the nuts and bolts of having a business, things like shopping carts and merchant accounts and all that stuff. I not only learned that, but I really immersed myself in the mindset behind it. I mean, I can't even let myself think an excuse. I don't give myself excuses for everything. Like when I don't exercise enough, or I like to do yoga. That's my exercise of choice. When I don't go for a few weeks or a few months, I start thinking of excuses of why I haven't gone. And I literally have trained myself to say, you just have chosen not to go. You have no excuses.
Right.
There's no reason why you haven't gone to your yoga classes. You just have not gone, and it's your fault. So I've really, taken that and implemented it in every part of my life now. I just never give myself excuses. So, I mean, when I have lots of friends now who have babies, and they look at me, oh my gosh, you're so lucky. And I'm like, I'm not lucky. I just worked my butt off and I invested in myself. I mean, I have put a lot of money into my business, and it's not, so there's a lot of work that people don't see.
The quickest way, I there isn't much that just like sets me off instantaneously, but when I hear the word, you got lucky, that just sends me to all kinds of fits, and I'm just like, what part? I have to ask people, what part of my wife not being able to eat or drink was lucky? What part of me not being able to walk or talk and breathe was lucky? What part of any of that was lucky in terms of the results? None of it. I mean, everything was consistent decisions, lots of prayer, lots of faith, lots of struggle, lots of tears. I mean, sorry.
And
You
it's
said
a lot.
you said the L word, and I just went nuts.
I know. Well, I totally, I'm with you there completely. And I mean, from my point where with my situation, it's like, I'm not lucky. I have, worked really hard. I have, I'm in the first year essentially of my business, and I haven't been perfect. I use credit cards. Like, I don't like it, and I'm working on, getting out of that bad debt. But for me, like, I have just made the sacrifices with some bad debt to invest in my business. And I just really firmly believe that I'm going to be wildly successful over time and pay all that debt off. But I've got a very supportive husband, who gives me the time and support that I need to build the business. So it's really not luck. It's guts. And my coach always said, wealth rewards risk. And I have taken a lot of risk. I've taken the risk in, using credit cards to make some, ends meet, so I could, invest in that merchant account and that shopping cart, for example. So again, it's like luck is just a horrible word because there's no luck at all. It is work, it is risk that I've taken, it's time. I mean, I have had mornings where I was waking up at 5 a.m. before the baby got up so I could get some work in, and working till 9 or 10 o'clock at night until I'm like delirious and about to go to bed. I mean, yeah, that's an entrepreneur for you, just working and working and working until it pays off.
That's true. But now, truth be told, we are quote unquote lucky because we get to do what we are choosing to do.
Yeah.
Now that part is true.
Yeah.
However, we've chosen to do it, and we've chosen to make the sacrifices to do
Right.
those things. Now, the one thing, if I may, I'll share with you is here's a quick definition for all of you that I love to use because I get this debt question a lot, especially being a real estate guy, is that you just got to have you have to have a different understanding of it. Bad debt is well, let me give you the definition of good debt. Good debt is any debt that you can get someone else to pay for, and you actually get your customers to pay for your debt.
Right.
Therefore, I don't necessarily consider that bad debt. I wouldn't let that bother you that much because most people, what they're doing is they're not using the funds. It's not borrowing money that's the issue. It's what you do with borrowed money. You're using
Right.
it in an investment. Now, that investment is primarily in yourself. It's in systems for the business. It's in infrastructure to continue to deliver good quality products and services. And so long as that continues to work, you've got no issues.
Right.
The challenge is that most of us, when we're using debt, we go buy shoes or Disney World tickets or clothing or food or something that doesn't have the ability to pay us back, quote unquote. That's when we have issues, and because when it comes to business. You must learn to leverage many different resources, not just capital, but you've got to learn to leverage everything that you've got. And that's one of the fun things about being an entrepreneur is that you are by definition guaranteed to grow and learn to do things and use resources in ways that you had never considered before. And it's our resourcefulness that makes us unique. Now, just for those wondering, because they're probably wondering, what does she do?
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about that yet.
Tell us a little bit more about what it is that you and your company does to provide value to the marketplace.
Sure. Well, my main company is Entrepreneur Support Services. So it's a virtual assistant firm. And my main service is Interview Connections, where I work with podcasters and I find and book great guest interviews. My team takes care of the confirmation emails and the promotional graphics and, making sure the guest knows when their show goes live, that kind of thing. I work with entrepreneurs and I help get them booked as a guest expert. So get them more exposure through these types of podcast interviews, help them get their message out. And I also have some kind of graphic design services. I design infographics for people who want to utilize those types of graphics on things like Pinterest or even getting them printed out as materials at live events. And I have a couple of clients that I do, client support and sales work because I do have that fundraising background. So for a select couple clients, I do sales work, which is a lot of fun for me.
Indeed, indeed. Now you bring
Yeah.
up something that I love to hammer on because many times, I get the question either at a live event that I'm teaching or maybe if I'm doing a mastermind group, people ask me, Jay, do you think I can do this? And I often have to tell people that the truthful answer is no, you can't. The version of who you are at this moment cannot do what it is that you're asking to do. You have to become someone new, and that's fine. However, here's the gold, and this is what I want to know from you. You've been fundraising for nonprofits. You're now a mother. You're a wife. You're a daughter, of course. You've got many different skills in many different areas. I'm just kind of curious which skills that you've had to use in other roles actually transfer over to being an entrepreneur that have helped you.
I mean, the short answer is all of it. But to be more specific, for me, I want to talk about my experience with the fundraising because most tangibly, it's the sales skills that I learned
Yep.
doing that. And so what I did, quite literally, is I knocked on doors in residential neighborhoods, and I went face to face with people, essentially cold calling. And I'm sure folks in real estate have definitely experienced that kind of,
Oh yeah,
interaction.
I love door knocking. It's fun.
It is fun. I spent 6 years doing it, and I enjoyed almost every minute of it. Um, knocking on doors, introducing myself to someone who had no idea I was going to be there, and I introduced the organization and what we did, and I walked away hopefully about 50% of the time with a check as a donation to the organization. And the skills that I learned doing that have been so transferable to being an entrepreneur. Because even for entrepreneurs to say, "Oh, I'm not in sales," if you're an entrepreneur, you are in sales because you're
Right.
always selling. What you do. You might not be being a you might not be a sales rep directly for somebody else, but you're selling your own services or products or whatever you have to offer. And so I have really, I mean, we would teach very specific communication skills with the canvassing, as far as targeting, being very specific about what you want and getting it. How to communicate a message short and simply. I had a consult call with one of my clients at Interview Connections, and I was asking him about his podcast, and it was a new podcast he hadn't launched yet, and he had this whole big vision of what it was and the purpose behind it, and it was very very confusing. It took him about 10 minutes to explain it to me, and I worked with him to get it down to a one sentence explanation. And it was really really exciting for me because that was something that I did canvassing, as I took a big issue, a big environmental issue, and I was able to communicate it to someone at their doorstep in one or two sentences. So that has been a skill that I've transferred. And just, I mean, when I talk to prospects on the phone for my business or for my clients, the skills of just being able to drive people to action. I mean, yesterday I had a lot of fun talking to a prospect for my client. And it was for his newsletter marketing program, and on the phone, I talked to the prospect, I told him all about the program, and I said, great, well, I can sign you up right here on the phone if you'd like to get started, get you going this week. And we got him signed up on the phone. So just that, the confidence to just give people a call to action and walk them through the steps. The skills from my last job were just very very transferable and has really helped me as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, when you said that you directed a staff of fundraisers, I was like, oh, then she's gonna. There's no way. Of course, I mean, once you've
Yeah.
done sales, once you've sold something, you can sell
Hmm.
nearly anything because there's
Yeah.
so many similar processes to that, and it doesn't really matter, what your passion is. I mean, it doesn't. You could sell pet rocks. It doesn't matter. There's a person who wants a
Exactly.
pet rock, okay,
Exactly.
and that becomes your business. And that's the thing, is because I find a lot of entrepreneurs are wondering, what's the best business for me to be in? How can I make the most money in the least amount of time with the least amount of effort? And that's so the wrong way to go about it. And and the one thing that they're running from is learning how to sell. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
you better run toward that puppy because you can't avoid it.
Exactly.
And they try. I just think it's funny. Okay. Want to make sure that you are still listening. I'm sure you are. Anyway, the cash flow question, it's that time. So, last time, what was the question? For those of you wondering, you send in an email to cashflowquestion@cashflowdiary.com, or you can call us at 800-689-1764. Give us your answer to the cash flow question for an opportunity to win an autographed copy of the book, Cash Flow Diary, the book. Wow. It goes through my entire business model so that you have the opportunity to duplicate it in full if you so desire. And most importantly, make sure that you're able to get some of that, good old cash flow stuff for yourself as well. Anyway, last week's question: what is the definition of loss to lease? Now, what's interesting is that you could have just looked this one up. Easy free book right there. Loss to lease. So I'm going to do something that I think is a little funny. I'm just going to read the long technical version and then just summarize it. Loss to lease. A charge taken against gross potential rent for leases signed on apartment units after their initial lease up term has expired to stimulate when the leases are either renewed or a new tenant moves in either case, leased. At a rent below the then gross potential rent, loss to lease is calculated by applying an assumed loss percentage to the GPR. The resulting dollar value is deducted from the GPR. Now, in English, have you ever seen those signs where you got like a $50 off a move in or $100 off a move in, or hey, get a free microwave if you sign up today? Those types of things. Any sort of, you could use the word concession that's given as an incentive to lease that is typically below what they're calling GPR, or in this case, gross potential rent or gross scheduled rent, or you just call it whatever the market rent is, a little bit less so that you get it leased up. Hopefully that gives you some clarity and understanding. If you're out there looking at pro formas and you see loss to lease, here's another hint on that one. They're probably using an accounting method known as the accrual method, which is going to make it very, very challenging when you're doing your due diligence to be able to know what their true profitability or cash position looks like on that particular building. But you can get the due diligence done. Make sure that you connect with the individuals on your team who know how to do that. Now, let's get over to this week's question. So here's your shot. If you're listening to us for the first time, here you go. Remember, it's 800-689-1764 or cashflowquestion at cashflowdiary.com. So here's the question. What is the name of the financial statement where you will find the source of a company's incoming cash? I'll say that again. What is the name of the financial statement where you will find the source of a company's incoming cash?
And I don't know if you've ever heard the acronym WIFM, what's in it for me?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that I always use that too, because when you're selling it's the same type of thing when I pitch guests, and when I pitch potential guests to podcasters, to be a guest, we're not making a transaction, with money, but we are making a transaction of, I want to sell you this guest and have them on your show. And I focus on what's in it for them. They're asking what's in it for me. So I, sell like what kind of content the guest has to offer, what kind of value they're going to offer to the audience. I'll be very specific of your audience is listening to your show for, stories on how to create cash flow or fill in the blank. And this guest can fill that need with this type of content. So I always, focus on what they're going to get out of the guest or the service or the product, not just why they should get it.
Yeah, and I hope everyone's listening. I mean, they've heard me tell them. So that the whole thing, the people ask me all the time, what do I say to a seller? What do I say to a seller? You find out what their need is. Find out why they're going to do business with you. Can they do business with you? Do they want to do business with you? And do they want to do it now? When you can find out those things, once you know those things, then you can move forward with whatever it is that you might have to offer. Until then, they're probably not even interested in hearing what you have to say. So,
and I just thought of a great other little sales tidbit for people that go to live events. I've been to a couple live events in the past 6 months or so, and the big key is listening and asking questions. A new friend, Michelle Letterman, talks about she was doing an interview on Jason Silverman's podcast that you were recently a guest on.
Yep.
And she was talking about why introverts have a benefit in networking or being at live events. And she said the benefit is that they listen more. They're not going up to everyone and talking. And it's actually so much better to be listening. So I make a point at live events, when I meet people and when we talk to each other, I always start out by saying, tell me about yourself. Even if they start the conversation with, tell me about your business, I always say, well, first, tell me about yourself, because that's going to affect how I tell them about my business. What aspects am I going to tell them? I want to make sure that I can appeal to them. So I always start out by asking them questions and letting them talk first. And that's just such a really just a huge sales technique because again, you're letting them talk first and you're not just talking at them.
Oh my goodness, that was nothing but gold. I hope you're listening right now and taking notes, because every script that I've ever produced for people to use inside of real estate does that exact same thing. My basic one, the one everybody knows that I teach people is, hey, hi, my name is Jay. I'm a wholesaler. What that means is that I buy property at a discount and I sell property at a discount. What type of investing are you looking to do? And then you shut up and you take notes and you just
Yeah,
listen. That's it.
exactly.
There's nothing else needed. And as you go through that process, when you're listening, well, I should say actively listening,
Right,
not
right, right,
pretending to
right.
listen.
Another technique that I've learned.
Yeah, right. Then you have the ability to make all of these things happen. So help me understand something. How is it that you identified, because, as an entrepreneur, one of the things I'm always looking for, a phrase that I was taught by my mentors a long time ago was that entrepreneurs solve problems, obviously. And the bigger the problem, the bigger the solution that's needed. The bigger the solution, the bigger the income that could be generated. Therefore, I'm curious as to how you decided upon providing the type of service that you did. Like, what was that process? Was this the first thing you said, or were you considering, maybe I could do this business, and then maybe I could do this business, and how did you decide? Yeah, this is the one. This is what we want to do.
That's a really great question, and there's definitely big business lessons in this story. I when I first started my business, my dad is my business coach. He was my first client. He helped
Well,
me
that's
start out.
convenient right there.
Yeah, it was convenient. I might have gotten lucky there. That might be the one area that luck was
Right, that's
but
convenient.
but again, he's old fashioned. He would not have hired me if I was, not a good worker.
Yeah, yeah.
so so anyway, I'm one of his virtual assistants, and one of the tasks that he wanted me to take over was getting him booked on podcasts, internet radio shows. Hadn't, it's not something that I had been doing before, but I just kind of figured it out. So I started just by reaching out to podcasters to book him as a guest. And I did that for several months before expanding the service to other people. And over time, I realized there were a lot of podcasters that I would book him with that actually reached out to me personally and said, all right, okay, well, what do you do? Who are you? I've never really had somebody that connected me with a guest. It's always been kind of the podcaster just reaching out directly to the potential guest. And I didn't really have an answer for them because I was Jim Palmer's VA. He just told me to do this, so I didn't really have some big, like, sparkly service to offer them. But when enough people asked me what I did and showed interest in it, talking with my dad and thinking about it, I saw the opportunity that there was a need in the marketplace. I mean, podcasts have gotten so popular over the past year. With the rise in popularity of podcasts like Entrepreneur on Fire, with John Lee Dumas's success of creating this very profitable podcast, just a lot of people had followed suit, and it's just a great way to get content out there for people that don't want to write a blog or want another way to be communicating with their audience. Podcasts are just an amazing way that entrepreneurs can get their message out. So just so many people are launching podcasts, and they're often entrepreneurs who are doing this in addition to their main business. It's not their main revenue generator. So there was a need to get an affordable, easy way to take care of the logistics of finding and booking guests. So once I had enough people express the need for the service, that's when I decided to create Interview Connections. So really the big business lesson is make sure there's a need. I heard a great quote, and this is probably a pretty well-known little anecdote, but where's the best place to open a burger restaurant? And it's where there's hungry people. Or I'm sorry, it's not where there's it's where there's hungry people. So I don't know if I'm getting that quote right, but
okay.
it's essentially, you know what I mean? It's you need to make sure there's a need in the marketplace, because the lesson is, if there's a town full of vegans, you're not going to be successful. So I totally messed that story up, but I
That's
hope
fine.
everyone forgives me. It's yeah, you need a need in the marketplace, so
But
interview
it's
connection.
okay. It's okay. But
Yeah,
you
so
you illustrate a number of things in terms of how to identify that need. Sometimes the need isn't apparent. We don't know. You just started, and that's the key thing here is one of the most important things you can do when you're trying to build cash flow and make things happen is start. The marketplace will begin to give you feedback about what it needs, and that's the key. It's what I call the feedback loop. And until you're in that feedback loop, you don't know. Everything's a guess. You think, hey, my great idea is great until the market either buys it or doesn't. And then you
right.
can go, maybe it isn't so great. And you can tweak it and make it into what it needs to be that the marketplace is asking for, so that you can then, find your little comfortable spot in order to do it. Now, there are some of you who are, we'll call them difference makers, influence changers, trend makers, who are bold and brave enough and have the ability to actually establish and start a trend. A very, I would say, famous company who's pretty good at doing it is Apple, in that they start something that other companies follow, because it wasn't until they started making, what is it? I think it was iMacs in various different colors. Now we've got vacuum cleaners that come in various different colors because for some reason someone decided that we need, an orange vacuum, and therefore we've got the choice.
Right.
But most of us, we have to just find a need
Right.
and work from there. And that's what I like. Is that you're like, well, I can fill this. This is what I can do. I can do this piece. And you've built systems around that in order to deliver what is a very valuable service. Because you are absolutely right. The podcasting is not my full-time thing. And I'm like, I got to find people to come on. How do you do that? And
Right.
that's new.
Yeah.
And then that's when you appeared. And I was like, relieved.
Exactly. And it's yeah, I mean it's filling the need. And I like what you were saying about feedback is because I really waited till I had enough feedback. And now it's always evolving and changing and getting, systems are getting better and the graphics are getting better and we're going to be offering more services, something about
Yay.
show notes and
Yay.
there's things I have, clients come to me, well, do you do this too? Or do you help launch onto iTunes. And so there's so many different services that I want to be able to offer. But obviously, like everything takes time and figuring out what to charge for everything. So it's an exciting journey. But again, you just have to start because where I am now with Interview Connections and the services that I'm offering and the team that I have in place to help me service so many clients, I didn't start with all that. Interview Connections was a totally solo operation when I first started on day one, but now I have a whole team of designers and an assistant to help with the logistics. So, but you just have to start because you never know where it's going to take you unless you get going.
Exactly. Now, there are two things I want to point out that I'm hoping you heard. One, first of all, she's going to be doing show notes. I'm so excited about this because I know there are many times when you're listening to the episodes, I'm running through books, the guests are running through books, we're giving you websites. You're like, oh, I can't write that down fast enough. What was he saying? Where was that at? We're going to have those posted on the website. You'll be able to get those resources. Yay. Now, the other thing, though, that I want to talk to you about, because you mentioned this, how your business looks today is nowhere near what it looked like at the beginning. And dare I say, you probably couldn't have envisioned it being what it currently is. You just started and adjusted. Would that be an accurate statement?
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm always thinking about, I always try to think about my big goal. And for me, the big goal is creating a lifestyle that gives me a good amount of freedom to be able to spend time with my family and travel on vacation when I want to. So I'm always thinking about the systems to put in place to make it so I could leave my business for a week and have it keep running. So for example, when I first started, I was pitching my dad as a guest. And that's a lot of trading hours for dollars. And I do have VA work where I still, trade hours for dollars. And it's still necessary for me right now. But I thought, several months ago, I really made the decision of, all right, if I'm going to grow my business to a place where I can leave it for a week and go on vacation and keep it running, I can't have a model where it's all dependent on the hours I spend on the business. I need to be able to create a service where it can run efficiently and it's not all me logging time, you know?
Yes.
Um, so that's why I said I changed Interview Connections to be servicing podcasters, not necessarily me going out and actively pitching people as guests. Because while I can do that effectively, it takes a lot more time and it's not necessarily as efficient and effective use of my time. So I've created a new program where people can join my guest database and come on strategy coaching calls with me to learn how to pitch themselves. But it no longer has me in the driver's seat of going out and doing all that pitching, because I set a goal to kind of advance myself to the more the CEO role rather than the, concierge assistant type role.
Totally understood. And this is the exact point that I wanted to drive home. You start solo and then you grow over time until you get to that CEO role. And all of us go through this, but what I find to be very interesting is that how many of us are stop. We know that yes, we want to eventually be the CEO role, but we're not willing to be the chief cook and bottle washer at the beginning. And we want to start where the end is, and we can't. And so we say, since we can't start where the end is, I'm not going to start at all. And I think that's
Right.
such a huge mistake, because there are so many lessons that you learn as you grow into the space. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about right now, is especially for those of you who have been over to Begin Investing Now, you know what's there in terms of being able to get the course on that's teaching you how to buy and hold property and all this other stuff. But that side of the business is beginning to run all on its own without my intervention, where I don't, the properties get vetted, everybody gets what they're looking for, all the due diligence is done, and I don't have to do it. And that gets me very, very excited, because we can serve more of you guys faster than me having to stop and look at each and every one and all this other stuff. It's just amazing what is possible when you begin to put systems in place. And in fact, my team right now is the best version of the team I have ever had, and partly because most of you guys listening, you keep requesting more services from us, and I've had to find a way to accommodate it all. It's like, what are we going to do? We're going to break if this keeps happening. So it's awesome. It's just
Yeah.
a matter though of building a team. So why do you think, I'm just curious, in the time that you've been an entrepreneur now, why do you think so many people fear or maybe run from the idea of directing a team?
Well, it's just risk. I mean, there's just a lot of risk involved in all parts of entrepreneurship. I actually, just a little story that I thought of when you asked that question is I hired my first VA that I hired, which I don't believe in regretting anything, because everything leads to the next thing, which is leading me where I am today.
I
But
know where this is going.
so my first VA was actually a friend. Okay. And that's, you'll probably all know,
I
oh, that's
really
a
know
mistake.
where this is going.
And she wasn't terrible. Like, she's a close friend of mine, but she saw what I was doing and I was very clear about all the work that went into it. And she goes, I love what you're doing. I want to be able to work from home. And she is a very responsible person and everything. And I said, listen, if you really want to do this, I'll give you VA work, and, you can help me in these areas, and, it'll all be great. Well, that was a stupid mistake, because one of the big things I learned from another coach of mine who taught me how to build my team was, you don't just hire someone to do whatever you need. You need to hire someone to fill a specific role. So that was mistake number one. And then and she had always said, hey, if you have more work, I'm willing to kind of grow with you. And I got to a point where I was getting capped out, and I said, listen, I've got 8 hours of work a week that I can give you. Let's do this. And she got scared, and she said, I don't want to leave my job. I don't want to cut my hours on my job because there's risk there. She would need to go a little bit, take a couple weeks, couple months before she could start seeing profits. And she got scared and kind of just didn't want to take on the work. So it ended fine. It was very respectful. I said, won't really work out anymore. And I don't really have the work for you anymore. I'm going in a different direction. And I hired an assistant who is fabulous because I interviewed people and I hired someone with experience and so it all worked out. But it is definitely, there's a risk there, and you have to be okay with, I think, to answer your question specifically, I think what holds people back or what makes people afraid of it is probably a big part of it is the investment. I mean, having a team, you have to pay them. They're not free. And
No.
the good ones do cost money. I mean, I had to, for my assistant, Angie, who is amazing, like she was more expensive than I thought I was going to pay, but I have realized that what you might save in dollars will cost you so much more in time and frustration. And I realized that with my first VA, she was very inexpensive because she was new and I was teaching her, but I had to spend so much more time training her and kind of like changing things around when I didn't really like the way they were done. So it's really, really worth it to make the investment in someone who might have higher rates, but is really good at what they do, because they'll take your business so much further than you could either on your own or with a team member who isn't really good.
Indeed. I can only agree strongly because I've relearned that lesson many times, especially in the executive assistant position, that I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've relearned that lesson until the one I have now. She's the one I pay the most, have ever paid the most. In fact, I now it's just crazy because I have to pay her more than I used to make at my old job, and I'm like, when did that happen?
Well, that is, no, Jay, I totally understand that because, as I evolve my business, and like I said, I still have clients where I, trade the hours for dollars kind of thing and charge hourly. And, I'm paying my assistant more than I'm charging some of my clients. So it was definitely you got to kind of bite the bullet, so to speak, because it was hard for me, like, well, I'm not making that much. Well, why am I not making that much? Because I made the mistake of not charging enough.
Right.
So,
right,
but,
right.
Because I kind of took the risk and made the leap to hire someone who, is experienced and really good at what they do, it's obviously it's motivating me and teaching me to charge more, to be frank.
No, I hear you. We provide great value. There's so many lessons that you learn along the way. But here's one thing that I have learned with all of the individuals on my team. All of the individuals on your team, I tend to break them into either offensive players or defensive players. Offensive players should bring in more money than you actually pay them. Period. Defensive players should save your company more money than you actually pay them. So if you've got defensive players who end up costing the company any money, that's the problem. So I don't really care. I mean, I care, but I don't really care how much I pay someone, so long as their value is more than not their perceived value, but their actual measurable value is more than what they bring in or how they save the company money. And I often use this example that my CFO, I pay her a very nice six-figure number every year, and it's like, wow, I really yet she's more than enough of the reason why we are able to collect and raise and accurately manage millions of dollars of other people's money going out there into the marketplace to develop property and be that the international stuff or national stuff. Without her, I couldn't do it.
Right.
And so it's like, who cares what you pay them so long as that happens?
Exactly. And I really like that analogy. I've never heard of it like that before, but it makes so much sense. And another kind of mindset and vocabulary tweak that I've made is, not calling something an expense unless you don't get a return. So I always make sure I say my team members they're investments that I make. What you pay them is an investment because I'm getting a return on it. So long as the systems are in place properly. I mean, so again, as long as they're bringing a return, as long as they're helping make your business more profitable, it's all an investment. It's only an expense if you don't get a return on it.
Yep. I see. What did I hear? It was, if you build the people will build the business. That's what I heard it as. And I'm just like, okay. I
Mhm.
just didn't know how that always works out in the real world. But you've been an excellent example of that very thing, of it working out in the real world, and you're making that shift, that switch, and you just and what I really love about entrepreneurs in your story in general is that you were clear on what you valued. You valued staying at home. You valued the fact that you really your freedom. You didn't want to have to
Mhm.
ask permission
Right.
for anything that you didn't feel you should have to ask permission for. And you did something about it. You didn't leave it on your complain list. You didn't leave it on stuff you just wanted to gripe about. You said, well, I should do something about this. And you figured out a way to do it. Even though you didn't know, even though schooling might have been completely different,
Mhm.
you said, well, this is what I can do about it. And let me go do that. And you did. And I love it.
Right. Thank you.
that that's what makes entrepreneurs so great, is that we can live. That's why we're so excited, is we're living
Yeah.
closer to our values than what most people get to do. And well, who wouldn't be
Exactly.
excited about that
Yeah.
every
I
day?
totally agree.
And even on the bad days. Now, I'm sure you've had at least one bad day.
Yeah.
But so how do you manage to make it through those? What's the secret tip to getting through those bad days where you feel like I just want to go get a job again?
Oh, well, you know what? Honestly, I've never thought I just want to go get a job again. That
Okay.
that thought is actually that has never crossed my mind. But there obviously have been days where, maybe a client really frustrates you, or you make a mistake and you're mad at yourself that you didn't handle it properly, or maybe you've got so much work. I mean, when you're in a business where you have clients that you directly communicate with, it can be sometimes worse than having a boss at a job.
Yeah.
I mean, I am lucky. I have clients that are fantastic, and I love them all. But I mean, everyone has their bad days and everyone has their annoying days, and there are definitely those days where where I'm happy that I work from home because I can sit there and go, ugh, and nobody sees or hears it.
No, none.
So, you know, it's so much mindset too. Like I said, I've immersed myself in personal development, and it's so many like mindset um shifts that have helped me get through the days. And I do yoga a lot, so just the ability to say this too shall pass is really helpful because yesterday was a crazy busy day and I was so tired by the end. I was just exhausted, laying on the couch like half dead at 7 o'clock. And today it's like a lot more leveled out. I'm not everything is kind of smooth sailing, and I think why do the days have to why can't they all be just leveled out? But
Nah, not sorry. You didn't sign up for that.
no, I didn't.
No,
I know
you
what I
did.
signed up for.
You did not sign up for that. You left the leveled out
That's a job, yeah.
long time ago. But yeah, and that's the thing. I think sometimes people we just, it takes a lot of responsibility. It takes a lot of character and courage to be able to provide jobs for people, and that's kind of what you're doing now. And you've
Right.
crossed that line, and life is different, and it's definitely fun, and you're being able to create cash flow to live closer to the values that you aspire to, which is great. And so many of us fail to do that for all kinds of reasons, and I just commend you for being courageous, and
Well, thank
because most people don't develop that courage.
thank you so much.
So, before we end here, just kind of curious if there's anything that you would want to share with that person who's out there thinking, "Man, I should totally do it," because there are people who are thinking, "I should totally get started. I should totally build my business. I should totally finally go write that offer. I should finally go do what I know I need to do." What would you say to them
I,
right
you
now?
know, I just want to offer encouragement, and I really think the saying, wealth rewards risk really rings true here because it is going to be risky and it might be tight at first, and it probably will be tight at first before you start turning a profit. You might work in the red for a while, but what's on the other side is so much better than a steady small paycheck that is never going to grow as massively as your income or your cash flow could grow when you're an entrepreneur. So take take the risk, use whatever resources you have available, whether it's the coaching and mentoring that you get through podcasts or reading books or hiring a mentor or coach. Just whatever you can do, just start, because you have to take action if you're going to see the results that you want.
Indeed. I couldn't have said it better myself. In fact, I know for us, I remember one thing I said to myself when I was first getting started in business was, even if I earned the exact same dollar amount as I am right now, but had more control over my time and situation, it would have been worth it.
Totally.
It would have been worth it. And all the other stuff is just gravy. So
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate you taking the time to invest here and helping others understand what it takes to create cash flow in various different ways, and making sure that, we can learn from your example, your courage, your tenacity, dare I say, and making sure that we go out there and doing the things that we need to do in order to make, success happen for ourselves and for our family. I thank you for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. This, as you guys know, hopefully you enjoyed listening to Jessica. I know that one of the things that, can go through your mind is, yes, she could do it, but I could never do it. And you got to understand that we all start somewhere, and now could be that somewhere. Don't be thinking about someday. I mean, all the time we say things like, someday I'm going to get started. That if you look at your calendar right now, I want you to find the day that's called someday. And if you don't find it, I want you to make it today. Today is the day that you got to get started so that you can begin to make those changes. It's incremental changes implemented over time. And I think you'll understand one day when you look back and go, man, I'm so glad I got started. Anyway, that's been another great episode, and I will talk to you guys soon. Until next time.
Thank you for investing your time with Jay Massey and the Cash Flow Diary. When you have a moment, please visit iTunes and leave a positive comment about the show. And go now to our website, cashflowdiary.com, to take advantage of our free business building course, Cash Flow Foundation. Gain the knowledge, understanding, and skill that will teach you how to never need a job again. Until next time.